everybody. What's going on? Welcome to a very special episode of Dunks and Donuts. Ryan, how are you today?
I'm so good. How are you doing?
I am doing excellent.
Tell the people.
This is a very special episode. Today, we are joined by somebody who, for one, has the perfect radio voice. He's a multi-sport play-by-play aficionado. He called the first ever Pixar-inspired Toy Story Fun Day football broadcast, and he will undoubtedly fill the shoes of the legendary Mike Gorman on Celtics NBC Sports Boston. Welcome to the stage, Drew Carter. How are you today, my friend?
What's up, guys? Great to see you.
See
Fantastic.
you
Thanks for having me on. Although I do feel kind of empty-handed right now. I was promised donuts.
I know.
Show.
Those
How do we
donuts
do
are
this?
fucking-
Do I send you my address, Ryan? What do we do here?
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry. I'll be in touch.
Yes. Drew was promised donuts. Ryan is the baker.
It's gonna
of
happen.
the two of us here, so she's the one in charge of donuts. But speaking of which, we have a whole audience who is super curious to know what your favorite kind of donut is.
Yes.
Oh, it's a
And
great
I have
question.
to know that to be able to send you the donuts. So you see?
Yeah, I see how we're doing this. I feel like I'd have to look at the menu and like see them in person because, I feel this way about ice cream too and cupcakes.
That's very fair.
You can't have one that's like, I'm going to get this no matter what. Because what if you go in and you lock eyes with a donut and it just speaks to you?
Yep. And it changes the trajectory of your experience. I understand.
Right. I have a wicked sweet tooth, as you guys can probably tell already. I actually went to my favorite cupcake place in America yesterday in DC because today is Scal's birthday. Recording this on Monday, March 18th. That's Scal's birthday. So
Happy
I
birthday,
went.
Scal.
What's that?
I just was saying happy birthday, Scal.
Yes. Happy birthday to the White Mamba. So I wanted to get him some cupcakes, and I also selfishly wanted to get myself a few because I love this place.
Understandably.
It was on a reality show, actually, like circa 2010. It's called Georgetown Cupcake. And so I went in there, and I'm like, I have no idea what flavor I'm going to get, but I am getting red velvet for Scal because obviously, it just matches his hair.
Makes sense.
And he actually said, you just got me red velvet? Like, that's racist. You just assumed I wanted red velvet?
Exactly.
But yeah, he does like red velvet, thankfully. So we nailed that one.
Good. And you said it was Georgetown Cupcakes?
Yeah, it's called Georgetown Cupcake. The show, I think, was called DC Cupcake. It was like a mini series. I used to watch with my sister. It was, the show was great, and the cupcakes live up to the hype. There's always a line out the door. Yesterday was a beautiful day in DC, so everybody was out in a good mood.
That's awesome. That sounds super fun, actually.
Yeah. So I got one for Abby as well. And Abby's got big night with the women's broadcast tonight.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Too, and a couple for myself. Yeah.
Fair enough. No, that's always fun, right? When you're able to share something that you love with like the people closest to you.
Definitely.
And being able to share that with Abby and Scal, I think is super duper cool. And you were just saying you and your sister, you used to watch that show when you guys were younger. So full circle moment, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And the cupcakes lived up to the hype too. I thought about like asking our security guys and some of the assistant coaches, hey, what kind of cupcakes do you like? But that would have gotten out of control. So I
was going to say, you can't do that once you get one for one person.
Yes. Right. So NBC Sports Family is where we kept it. And when I was talking to Abby and Jim, our director, about it, I'm like, hey, guys, just keep this on the down low because I don't want people knowing I have cupcakes. Then I would have to give one to everybody.
Yeah, no, that's also super thoughtful of you too. Like that's just so let's dive right in. I want to know, right? Like obviously you're not from here originally. You're from Minnesota, if I remember correctly. So moving to Boston and getting involved with, the media side of things, there's quite a few guys here who, like in the Boston media, who went to Syracuse as well. So what has your adjustment been like? Was there like a level of comfort knowing those, like seeing those guys?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm actually in a group chat with a bunch of Boston via Syracuse guys. Some of them are from here. Some of them are transplants like myself who hopefully will be here for, rest of my career. But it's been really nice. Sean McDonough is one guy who's specifically taken me under his wing, and I've known him since I was in school. because a lot of the time we'd be covering the same thing when I was on student radio and he was doing the big boy media. But I've known Sean for a while, and ever since I moved here, he's been extremely helpful. So a little bit of that, but I would say mostly, I feel like the people who have welcomed me with open arms are the people we just talked about. Scal, Abby, Jim, our director, Paul, our producer. My boss is at NBC Sports Boston. Kevin Miller is really the one who, was driving the bus to hire me. And so I feel like those people have done an awesome job of making me feel comfortable because, let's be honest, and I've said this before, I feel a lot of pressure following Mike.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Right. I mean, every time I see a Celtics fan, and thankfully most of the stuff people say is nice, but a lot of the time they're like, hey man, big shoes to fill. I'm like, I know.
Yeah. You're telling me. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thanks for the reminder. It's like, I'm sure this happened to Mac Jones in Boston too. Like he walks in to get a coffee or a donut and everyone's like, hey man, big shoes to fill, kid. It's like, wow. I got it. Yep. And so like yesterday on St. Patrick's Day, Mike is named like the Kennedy Irishman of the Year at the St. Patrick's Day parade. I'm like, oh my God, this guy, he can do everything. But what's
anything else, by the way, before I fully take over?
Hall of Famer, legend, been this for 4+ decades. Like the guy is, he's deserved all of it though, is the cool thing. And I'm happy to see him getting his flowers. And it's also been neat for me, like as someone who didn't grow up here, to kind of understand the relationship between Mike and the fan base. And another neat part of it is Mike's been amazing with me, and he's made me feel right at home. He's, told me to be myself, even though I want to make it a smooth transition for Celtics fans because Mike does the job one way. I am a little bit different, so I don't want it to be jarring for people. But all those people have really helped me settle in and just be me, and so that gives us a chance to have fun when something happens, like Sam Hauser makes 10 threes.
Yes. I can imagine, before I forget, I can imagine that it must be I guess just a refreshing that he is so willing, Mike in specific, to kind of pass the torch that way instead of, I don't know, kind of either one, not really caring, whatever, he's done and it's wrapped. It's, he's no longer broadcasting, but that he's so willing to pass the torch in front of the fans, you know what I mean? So we can see that experience makes the transition so much easier for all of us, I think, from the outside, seeing, oh, wow, cool. Then they clearly have a pretty good relationship, which feeds into the confidence of listening to you instead of him. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And, I feel like people, when the announcement happened right before the season, they're like, wait, so who's this guy? And and what are we doing? Like, is Mike calling all the games or some of the games? And I think it's pretty rare. Usually you're right, Ryan, when somebody leaves a job, whether it's broadcasting or anything, and they've been there for a while, they kind of just go. And
it's over. My time's done.
Yeah. But Mike, the fact that he's been on board with this whole plan, and I think he likes that he doesn't have as much of the travel, but he's just been really supportive throughout the entire process. And the big thing is, feeling empowered to just be myself and not trying to be Mike Gorman, because nobody can be, right? There's only one of that guy. So I just feel really fortunate that he's the one I'm following. Like, again, to use the same analogy, I don't know how supportive Tom Brady was of Mac Jones when was following him in this town. He was still
rolling out the carpet, so to speak.
Exactly. It's been really cool to, strike up that friendship with Mike. And he's actually said that to me as well. It's kind of nice that we didn't know each other beforehand, because now it gives us a chance to develop this new organic friendship.
Exactly. So genuine.
Yeah. As opposed to someone we've both known for years. Now it's kind of like, here's this new person. It's like, I don't know. It's like I'm his son, sort of.
Exactly. That's how I'm seeing it personally. So,
and that's actually a great way to describe it. Hearing it from you, saying that like you feel like you have that father-son relationship with Mike. And obviously Ryan and I, we had Aiden Hatton on here who helps produce the meetups with Mike and Drew. So through your experience working with Mike, obviously, as you said, it's been a blessing learning from somebody of his caliber. What would you say the most important thing he taught you is on and off the air?
Well, the authenticity thing, I think, is the biggest one. And other people have told me that as well. And I know, but I do think this was just different from anything I had ever done, taking over this job. So being yourself is key. The other thing is, and Mike has said this in the public, like when people write features on him and stuff, but he talks about the invisible third person in the booth. And by that, he means like you got to leave room for the sounds of the game to tell the story. Whereas I think it's easy to feel like, oh, we're the announcers, we have to be filling every second of air. That's not what people want. People want to hear the game. They want to feel like they're there. And Mike, if you listen to Mike, I think especially at this point of his career, he's very minimalist. He's very understated. He never forces it. I think I've probably done not a great job of that. I'd probably force it sometimes because like I'm so excited to be there and I really want people to like me. So I probably don't let the game come to me as much as I should. But every time I listen to Mike, it's like a reminder, hey, you don't have to say everything that happens. We're watching it on TV. We can see it.
Yeah, he said that in the meetups, the first meetups episode, where he had said that if you just sit back and just listen to the basketball game, and everyone will listen to the basketball game with you. And that's half of, he said it in a much more eloquent way, but he seemed very less proactive, so to speak, about commentating in a way that like he used to be more so. And now he's kind of laid back a little bit, of course, and definitely lets the game speak for itself. But yeah, he had mentioned that. So it's interesting you say that.
Yeah, I mean, our business is really a reaction business. You can't script out too much. Like you can go on with storylines and stats you want to work into the show. You know what you're going to say in the open right before anything happens. But after that, you kind of got to let the chips fall and just react to it. And Mike tells a story all the time about the first time he worked with Tommy. Mike had all his notes and he had been prepping the game. And like, I could show you guys what I roll into an arena with. Like, there's a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah, sure.
So he's like kind of fumbling through his notes, like trying to figure out what he's going to say off the top. And Tommy's like, "What's that? What's all that bullshit?" Basically. And Mike's like, "These are my notes. This is what I'm going to use to call the game." And Tommy,
I'm prepared.
Yeah, and he throws it over the railing. And Mike's like, "What have you done?" And Tommy's like, "We're going to watch the game. And we're going to talk about what's happening." And that's kind of been Mike's MO ever since. So I think that's a good lesson he's imparted on me, and I probably need to do a little bit better of a job of applying it. But I think the more we do, and especially calling the home games too, where I know there are a lot of Celtics fans everywhere on the road, but it's just different at the Garden, as you guys have experienced. And when it's that juiced up in there, and the people are reacting to the plays that we're reacting to as the Celtics announcers more, I think you can't help but just like shut up and listen to the crowd.
Yeah, exactly.
The crowd ambiance at TD Garden is completely unmatched from just about anything I've ever experienced. And I know you've tweeted about it before with that. But I guess my follow-up to that is, you were just saying that, Mike, he kind of is very minimalist and you do the opposite, right? But from what I've seen, at least on Twitter, is that everybody just loves how amped up you get. Because it almost feels like to us on Twitter, at least in my opinion, and I can't speak for everybody else, but you almost feel like you're just one of us, just live reacting to the game, and you're just so hyped, like all of us.
Well, that's the thing, is it's so much more relatable in a way that I feel like, oh wow, what an interesting take on involving the community and feeling like everyone's participating together. Is a huge unity point that you have the ability to do that I don't think I've ever really, at least not yet, haven't seen, where you exist in both worlds, sort of, just wanted to interject that really quickly because I think it's cool.
No, I think it's great. And so the best example of that is the way you're always coming up with awesome nicknames for everybody. And I do see that a lot of it has inspiration from Twitter.
Yeah.
Shout out to Chuddy's Corner. I know you've plugged them a few times with some of their nicknames. So I guess when you are calling the game, and obviously you said you do go in prepared and that you have your notes and everything, but those nicknames and those like fun calls, do those always just come to you during the game, or do you have those like pre-planned as well?
I would say they come from a variety of different places. And thanks for saying that, guys. That's really nice of you. I mean, that part of the goal for me is, I always say that every time we do a broadcast, I want to teach somebody something, make somebody smile, maybe tell a story that makes someone feel something, or, think about the world differently or whatever, and then make people feel like they're part of the show. It's why I say at the start of every broadcast, like, we can't wait to watch this one with you. Like, we're not here and, telling you what to think. We're here taking the game in alongside you. That's how I hope it feels for people watching in their living room. So
that's exactly it. Exactly it.
Yeah. It's really nice. Like when it feels like kind of a collective experience. And I think Twitter's been awesome for that, and Celtics Twitter is great. I don't know what Scott was talking about when he said Celtics Twitter isn't the same as it used to be. Like, I disagree.
We'll convince you, Scout. We'll grow on you. We're a slow burn.
Yes, I think Celtics Twitter is great. So it's been really nice, and I'm grateful, and I feel super fortunate that people have like found me on there, because my Twitter handle is ridiculous, but they found me on Twitter, and like we've been able to establish this connection. The nicknames, though, they do come from a variety of different places. Like some of them, I just, as I'm prepping the game, they come to me. I don't know. A lot of them do come from people on social media. Like sometimes I get great calls from people on Twitter, like Sam Hauser, Daddy to be for 3.
Tillman to the corner for Hauser. You bet. The daddy to be for 3.
You made my whole life. Just know in that day, my whole life was made. There was nothing else I needed. I was like, yeah, I could die happy right now. That was incredible.
You should have seen like you made that call, and all of a sudden I like turned my phone over and I have 10 text messages,
like,
9 of which are just like incoherent, like a cat walked across the keyboard.
I knew it was a good one.
She said it.
I knew it was a good one.
That makes me really happy. I think the 2 people who are most excited about that are you, Ryan, and then Sam's wife, Emmy. Because I talked to Sam about it.
Shout out Emmy. Yes.
Yeah, I talked to Sam before the game, and I was like, hey, I got this tweet from Ryan. Like, is it cool if I say this? Because I think it's a great call. And he's like, oh, that'd be awesome. And so I made sure I had his wife's name down too. And apparently she was cool with it. So that was, that was fun. Like anytime it can feel communal, I think that's a really important part. So that's been fun. So yeah, sometimes it's from people on Twitter. Sometimes I come up with them myself. Sometimes my friends will text me, hey, how about this? And I think what's nice is, now that we've kind of opened that can of worms, I feel like we get a lot of great ideas all the time. And it's just a matter of what do we have the chance to work in? Because again, you do have to react. Like if I had gone into that game with Sam Hauser, daddy to be for 3, and he didn't make a shot, it would have had to wait. I told him that. He was like super jazzed up about it before the game. I'm like, all right, bro, now you just got to make a shot. And of course he did, because he always does.
The lore of this is too good to be true. The fact that
this is great. I remember the first interaction I had with you on Twitter. It was your very first game that you called, and you had made a Marvel reference to Scal about Thor and his axe from Endgame. And I forget what you called it, but it was like close. And I tagged, I was like, nah, if we're going to do this, we're doing it right. And they were like, oh, someone just tagged me on Twitter and said, this is the name. And I was like, he's talking about me there. Like that was pretty cool to think about. And I agree. Like with your whole point is making it feel communal, I think is what has kind of gravitated everybody towards you to be, because let's face it, Boston fans are not great with change for any sport. So it's rough around here, but like the passion is just so intense about the sports teams here that it, when you're able to make it feel like a communal thing is kind of where that big draw is. And you've done just an incredible job with that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, thanks, I want to give you your props for that.
Yeah, it's really fun on Twitter. The thing is, Twitter is only part of the fan base. So I hope I do hope that that feeling is not exclusive to social media, but it is. I mean, it is really cool to log on and see messages from people like you guys who are really supportive. So
it's so interesting you say that. We were just talking to I won't mispronounce his last name, but Cam, who is so frequently in the media room and obviously takes so many great videos and like little clips. But he had said something similar, which is that Twitter is like maybe 10% of the people that they're worried about, which I think not only one is interesting, and it's always good to remember that the world doesn't revolve around you. You know what I mean? Like, and there's other people that exist somewhere else with different opinions. But also that just the feeling of the community on Celtics Twitter, and then I would imagine the other spaces that the Celtics community exists do have that commitment to the bit, where it just main character syndrome. We all feel like, wow, this is happening and this is us and we're the only ones here. And to do that with your kind of like entrance and all of us, at least on Celtics Twitter, really getting behind your takeover, where now it's kind of just, I don't know, the entirety of Celtics Twitter is rooting for you. And it may be 10%, but it's interesting because like it's that easy to convince those people. I have to imagine that other people feel similarly. And I think NBC in general, and I wanted to mention this to Aiden when we talked to him, but have done such a really, I mean, it's seamless. The transition has been almost not noticeable. It's been, first of all, of course, you all took a year to really make the full transition, but it hasn't been drastic or like kind of like a blunt end to anything. You all have done such a great job at slowly introducing what's happening, that it makes it easy as part of the community to get behind, because it seems like everybody else is behind it and supportive of it. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to give you your flowers there too.
Thanks. I hope so. I mean, that's really the biggest compliment you can pay me, is that it doesn't feel like a, I don't know, like a sudden or jarring.
It's not
transition.
jarring.
Yeah, that's really nice, because I mean, like we've talked about, following an absolute legend, and I want to do right by Mike, and I want to do right by this team, which is freaking awesome. I mean,
also that
they're up by like 10 games in the Eastern Conference, and it's made the job a lot more fun, a lot easier. It's the perfect time to join the organization, and it's also given us a chance to document a historic season already, and a potentially one, I hope one that people will remember forever.
You make a very good point. You make a very good point.
No, you make an excellent point. And that kind of builds off of what I wanted to ask next, which is, we talked about Twitter being 10% of the community, and, how they've gotten fully behind the transition from Mike to you. And obviously you're going to start doing the home games next season, and you say you want to be welcomed, and I have a feeling you already are, right? But from your experience traveling with the team and even just being at home games, whether it's as a fan or just to kind of like see what it's like to be at the home games, what has your interaction been like with the Celtics community as a whole in person?
It's been awesome, dude. It's been so cool. So cool. I mean, being at the Garden, like, I did not expect this to happen, but all of a sudden people ask me to take photos, and like I've signed a couple things. It's like, what are you guys doing? You want my autograph? You want like Scal's or Mike's? But someone's asked me to sign a box score after the first game we did. I think it was actually in Washington, D.C. And someone came up to us after the game, and she was like, "Hey, can you sign my box score?" I'm like, "Why are you asking me? Like, you mean to ask Scal?" And she's like, "No, like your first game, I want to have this one." which was really, really nice.
That's a smart girl right there. I'll say that.
That's very intelligent.
Scal gave me shit after the game, like on the post-game show, like, oh, people are already asking for autographs. So that was, that was cool. But the Celtics fan base, it's amazing. And again, like coming kind of from the outside, not growing up in Boston, but, going to school with a lot of Boston fans, kind of have ties to the area with my family, and my parents moved to the Cape before I even got the Celtics job. So it's like I don't know, it sort of just feels like I've been eyeing up Boston from across the room for a while now. Like, finally got together, which is great. And I feel like the fans have made it rewarding, because ultimately the reason I want to do a good job is not necessarily because I want people to like me. I mean, that's a human emotion. Like everybody wants to be liked. And
of course,
I certainly do too. Especially really when it's the first time I've had like this public of a platform. Like I've been working at ESPN for 2.5 years, but with that, you don't really have a relationship with a fan base. You kind of go from city to city and school to school or team to team. But with this, like it actually is my first chance to really, have a voice within a community, and that's the Celtics fans. So I do want to be liked. There's no doubt about it. But for me, I think it's more important that I help Celtics fans have a good time watching their favorite team. And I think the reason I put so much pressure on myself at the start, and still do, but it's getting easier, is I know the relationship Celtics fans have with the broadcast and with the announcer specifically. Like the Mike and Tommy show is legendary. Go back to Johnny Most, like this team has had the best announcers of all time. So I know how important that is, and I don't want to break that up or diminish that at all for the fans. So what we talked about with Twitter, and then seeing people in person and having them tell me like you're doing a nice job, that really means the world. And there have also been a couple like welcome to Boston moments where I was standing off to the side of our live pregame show after going on, and I hear someone behind me and he's yelling, new announcer, Drew Carter. Oh my God.
I was so glad when I realized your last name was Carter, and I'm like, oh yeah. Those 2 R's, they're gone. They don't exist anymore.
It works. It's like the Smart Pack commercial for Hyundai from back in the day. So that guy was really nice. I met his son and we talked for a while. And then there was another time where I was walking from the court level up to the concourse, through the stands, and some dude, he reached out his hand, shook my hand, pulled me in. He goes, you're doing a great fucking job, dude. You're the balls, kid. You're the balls. I'm like, are you serious? You just said that? Like, I thought nobody actually said that. I thought just a guy in the video. But it was that was really cool. So those moments, like, they really mean a lot, because what's most important to me is that the fans have fun watching and feel like I'm doing right by Mike and by the team. And when people say that stuff to me, it feels like it's worth it. You know what I mean?
That's good.
Now, did anyone who has been involved give you warnings about like the Boston fans and how rowdy it can get? Like, I'm assuming yes, but I guess what's like the funniest story that you've heard from like Scal or Eddie or like any of the guys that you've been working with? Like, what's the funniest thing someone's told you? Like, be careful because XYZ.
Oh man, I mean.
Oh yeah, or any I'd be interested in any on air warnings, things that like maybe tiptoe around that, because we know how a lot of people respond. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess this is one I picked up on my own, but don't say anything bad about Marcus Smart ever.
Just avoid the topic in general.
Yeah. It's not like I would criticize him anyway, but just in case you're ever thinking about saying something,
just have to qualify even here. Not that I would ever say anything bad about him, but
right. But I mean, just you can't do it. I don't know. I mean, stories about the Boston fans, I don't think necessarily, but working with Scal and just hanging out with him, like there's a lot of good stuff that just comes up organically, because he's one of the funniest dudes I've ever been around. And Scal also, I think a big reason why I got the job is how Scal supported me, like from the jump. The first time we ever met was right before we did this demo. And we called the second round game 6 against Philly last year. So that was a road game. And so the pregame show was at the studio. If it had been a home game, they would have been there on site, and they were for game 7. But because it was a road game, they were there, so Scal could come in and do this audition with me. And so we did it live. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, from the rip, he was super cool and felt like he wanted me to get the job. And I'm sure because he's a great guy, I'm sure everyone who auditioned felt like that. And I think everybody did that same Sixers Celtics game 6. So by the time Scal was on like his 10th audition, he knew exactly what was going to happen. So he could sound like Tony Romo calling a football game and be like, I think they're going to run high pick and roll and Harden's going to shoot a 3. But yeah, I think that's a big reason why I ended up getting the job. But like Scal says funny shit all the time. Like I remember we were flying to Oklahoma City and we're on the descent and you're looking out over Oklahoma and there's just nothing. It's like some farmland, but mostly just, it appears to be desolate and like anybody could go there and, build a house. And Scal goes, why do people say they want to go to Mars? Just colonize Oklahoma City. Space here. I'm like, who says that? So that shit, like stuff he says just like off the cuff, I find hysterical. And there are a couple things, like a couple impressions that he does that I think are really funny. And if you listen to his radio show, you can kind of pick up on those. And so we have a good time, man. Like it does feel like, we're actually friends first and then broadcast partners second. So that makes the job really fun.
You two have such a great charisma between the two of you that it seems like it could be like pulling teeth listening to you, especially since you guys didn't know each other previous to any of this. But it doesn't come off like that at all. It comes off like you've known each other for a long time. It's like a really easy conversation to listen to.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Ryan. And the other thing is, if you really listen closely, you'll notice that Scal and I like to give each other shit. And what he told me when we first met is, look, if I'm super nice to you, that's how you know I don't like you. But if I'm like giving you a hard time, that means we're good. And even though Scal is from Seattle, I feel like he's really adopted and fit into that Boston mindset. Because as far as I can tell, what I just said, that's how people in Boston are. Like, they're going to give each other shit. If we were Australian, I would say they're going to take the piss, which basically means the same thing. And if you're overly nice, like that just doesn't really fit in here, but it's love. And I think Scal and I have started to develop that relationship where we just basically shit on each other at all times. Like I like to put out on social media when Scal does funny stuff. So like
the stretching.
The stretching. And when he's signing autographs and he gets Sharpie on his own glasses and like stuff like that. I think is funny. Like Scal talking about young people and when he sounds super old. To me, that's another thing where Celtics fans feel like they know Scal. And so it's kind of like we're all making fun of him together.
It's that unity of it. Exactly.
It's great because to play off what Ryan was just saying, like it comes across like you two are like brothers, like with the banter. Yeah. And I think my personal favorite is every time you rub it in his face that he wasn't welcome to the meetups with Mike and Drew, and you're always like, you could just Venmo request Scal. I think those are my favorite like little tidbits of banter you guys have, just because it's so authentic. Like that's something I would joke about with my friends, So,
the Venmo thing is funny. I don't know if I told this publicly, but when I said the thing about the first time we talked about meetups with Mike and Drew, and he was like, who picks up the tab? And I said, I sent a request to @White Mamba on Venmo. I don't even know if Scal knew what Venmo was in that moment.
He was like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, sure, right. Like, let's move on. So fast forward to the plane that night. Actually, this was on the bus from the arena to the airport. It wasn't even when we were on the plane. He looks at me and he goes, dude, look at this. And he has an email from Venmo. Someone had Venmo'd him $1. He didn't even know he had the app, but someone had Venmo'd him $1. And his username isn't even White Mamba. I don't even remember what it is, but someone had found him and Venmo'd him $1. And it says, the little descriptor was, Drew is a silly goose. So I'm like, damn, people are really listening.
Yeah.
So Scal's like, I don't know how this happened. Like, I don't even have the app. I just got the email. My wife must have set it up, whatever. And so Abby and I are like, let's see if this username is right. So we found him and I Venmo'd him a cent and he got it. So it turned out to be the right thing. So this was like right after LeBron had scored his 40,000th point. And we love to talk about LeBron. And one of the Lakers announcers, when he's calling a LeBron play, he loves to like yell LeBron, and Scal and I think that's so funny. And so I Venmo requested him for $40,000, and the descriptor was LeBron.
Yes.
So he did not accept it though. But I was hoping that because he's like so old and bad with technology that he accidentally send me 40 grand, but he didn't.
That is one of my favorite stories I've ever heard about Scal. And I've shared an elevator with him by complete accident. That was a fun little, like, you know, my friends and I are leaving a game and we're going down to the parking garage and he just walks up, "Hey guys, what's going on? Have fun today?" And we were just like all starstruck in the moment.
I know.
But no, that's a great story. That's so funny. And it's just, it goes to show, you know, like you were saying, you feel like he's kind of adopted that Boston culture where, you know, if you're giving someone shit, it means like you guys are good, you're close, whatever. But if you're overly nice to somebody, you don't like them. And I can honestly, just from the short time you've been here, considering, you know, I can kind of see you starting to adopt those mannerisms as well. So, you know, you are starting to become a Bostonian, whether you like it or not.
Good. I'm glad. I want to be here for the next 50 years. So it's about time. Yeah.
No, and that right there is, I think, why there's been so much love and support behind you, is because going back to what we talked about at the very beginning of this is that authenticity. And you bring that authenticity with you just wherever you go, whether it's on the call, whether it's, you know, in an interview or doing a podcast. Like it kind of just is a natural thing that people, at least in my opinion, get from you. And I think that's what's going to obviously, you know, help with, you know, people supporting you and keeping you in Boston for a long time, because everyone I've talked to absolutely adores you and wants you to stay in Boston long term. And they are excited to see, you know, next season when you do start doing the home games. They're excited for those moments. And, you know, as we've said on here before, like, this just feels so much bigger because you are part of the community. And it feels like you're part of the community first that kind of got like almost like offered to NBC Sports Boston to be like, this is like our guy. This is who we want to represent.
This is the fans' pick, so don't make any changes.
Like, obviously, you know, you were scouted for NBC Sports Boston's pick, but you, because of that rapport and that relationship you've built with the community, you know, it feels like part of us is with you during the games. So
yeah, I hope so. I hope so, man. Yeah.
You know, so I guess my next question for you is, just so far, what has your favorite memory been of this whole thing? Like this whole getting the job, calling the games, meeting with Mike. Like, what has just your favorite thing been so far?
You know, maybe I might go back all the way to the start. One that really stands out is, you mentioned off the top there, Jared, that I did the Toy Story game for ESPN. And by the way, just a quick aside. So it's really like, first of all, you guys are way too kind. Thank you for saying that stuff. I do still work for ESPN. The way I look at it, so the Celtics have first priority. It's literally in my contracts. The Celtics have a priority. So Celtics is my first job. And then ESPN is, I think about it as like kind of like my side hustle. But I'm married to the Celtics, right? Yeah. So I'm married to the Celtics. So that's my number one thing. And I've always told people that my dream job is to be the voice of a team and then also, you know, call games for a network. So just want to let anybody know who's listening, like if you see me hosting SportsCenter or like calling lacrosse on ESPN, I'm not leaving the Celtics.
I
I'm
was
not
I
putting
was
in-
gonna say exactly. Everyone who
Yeah.
were we just talking to, I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about how not to just keep, making you accept compliment over compliment, but somebody was saying that you are so good at what you do that we just hope that you do stay here because you're good enough to not just only be the voice of one team. You know what I mean? So I think it's definitely reassuring for all of us to hear that.
Thanks. I mean, that's really nice. Again, thank you. But I don't plan on leaving. Like what I tell people is I want to be here for 50 years. I just have to not mess it up. Right.
Yeah.
So if I have my way, I will be doing this job basically until I retire. Because how could you ask for anything better? I mean, best organization, best fan base, best city, like it doesn't get any better. So anyway, with that being said, I go back to when I called that Toy Story game, and it was really neat. We got awesome reaction to that, and my phone was like Jared's when I said "Daddy to be" for 3. It was blowing up. I felt like the thing was going to overheat because a lot of people would hit me up like, "Hey, my kid is watching," or like my sibling is watching, or like, "This is amazing." Here's what
It
you
was
should
so
say.
fun.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a lot of fun to do, and the reaction was really neat. But my whole MO for that, as it pertains to my phone and like being connected to the outside world, is like I'm just going to ignore everything and I'll get back to it after the game. So I got to focus on this. We're looking at a lot of different things, and I'm looking at my stats. I'm trying to, think about when can I work into infinity and Bijan. Like hopefully he's going to score a touchdown. So stuff like that. Like I got a lot going on. So I'm not going to text during the game. But I did send one text during that game, during a commercial break, and it was to my new boss at NBC Sports Boston, Kevin Miller. I said, "Holy shit, we got Drew, JRUE Holiday," because during that game is when that news became official. And I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, because at that point I had just gotten the job. Like I had accepted it, and we had taken media day. That was earlier that week, so I knew it was happening. And then when we got Holiday, I'm like, "Holy shit, we might actually, win the championship this year." So I had to text Kevin, and thinking back on that, it's like, damn, even then I didn't know how good this team would be.
Yeah.
And during the season, I think my favorite memories have been being there in the house to see a historic team hit these checkpoints,
Yeah.
right? And there are certain times where you kind of throw your hands up and say, like, I'm kind of out of superlatives. I think about the 11-game win streak, right? Before the Cleveland-Denver trip. It's like, are we ever going to lose a game? Like when we were up by 20 in Cleveland, and obviously we know how that ended. We don't have to talk about that. But when we're up by 20 in Cleveland, I'm kind of like laughing on the broadcast. Like, this team is the Death Star.
Yeah.
And then I guess Dean Wade is Luke Skywalker in this analogy, and he, finds the exhaust pipe or whatever. But still, even with losing that game, and it happens, 82 game season, you're gonna have bad losses. Lose that game, lose at Denver. Even with those, like, we're on another win streak again. I mean, I hope by the time this publishes, we haven't lost a game, but we play Detroit tonight, so we should be okay. But you know what I mean? It's like seeing this team, check all these boxes, and I know no one's really going to care until we get to the playoffs, but it's just been an amazing ride, and I think a good lesson in like enjoying the ride, right? The journey is the destination in a way, and even if the team doesn't win a championship, which I think they will, I think we should be the favorites, but even if we don't, like, there have been really amazing moments along the way that I think we should be grateful for. Now, obviously, no one's going to want to hear that if we do lose, but it has been a really, really fun ride so far.
That's so interesting because you have to think about it in a way that you could easily be hearing your voice on game clips for years and years and years to come. If we end up winning Banner 18 this year for your first season really being on air, it's just crazy to imagine that it could either be that or it could be we won't talk about it, we're going to move on, whatever it is. So I'm sure you have to find that, like, that weight of, is it so important that I need to like really zoom in and be here, or should I still just enjoy the game and be a little bit more like flippant about the whole thing?
I think the way to do it is to be in the moment and not try to worry about, like, is this clip going to be immortal?
Yeah.
Like, I got to make sure I don't botch this call because, this will be a highlight on the documentary about the
Yeah, it's totally
2023
an in the moment thing. It would
Celtics.
have to
Yeah.
be.
Right. It would be great to start with a ring and sit next to Mike on the duck boat and that's his farewell. That'd be pretty sweet.
Yes.
All right, so I'm really superstitious, so I'm going to need you both to knock on wood real quick.
I do this all the time.
Yeah, I was superstitious too when Sam Hauser made his 10th three, and I was like, are we going to start talking about, the record, the NBA record? Then he immediately rolled his ankle on a guy on the Wizards bench. So I'm with you, Jared. I'm starting to become a little stitious as well.
Yes.
I've never really been superstitious either. And then the last few seasons, like where everything has happened just in awful timing, I've just been like, okay, like no more. Like
there's a reason I wear the same pair of joggers for every basketball game.
Me too. Just can't see my legs.
Those moments. Oh,
well,
go ahead.
Jared, just real quick on that, I've noticed that there's kind of a lot of scar tissue with this fan base. I didn't realize that. I think Boston fans might have a reputation, at least for people from like our generation, of always winning and always being super cocky going into every game. But I've noticed with Celtics fans, like when we're playing the Pistons at home, I'm like, all right, let's go get one. Here we go. Like, should win tonight. And everyone's like, hey, man, this is the type of game.
I was just about to say, can you chill?
Yeah, don't say that. Like Anthony Davis and LeBron are out for the Lakers. Like, hey, this is a trap game, which actually it turned out to be. We lost. But I do think, in a way, even though Celtics fans can acknowledge in the deepest recesses of their brain that this is the best team in the NBA at the moment, at least in the regular season. We'll see what happens when they maybe face Denver in the playoffs. But at least in the moment, this team is the best in the NBA. Even if they can acknowledge that, they're still like, I don't know, like until we have that 18th banner, we're not going to count our chickens, which I understand. But for me, I'm new here. I'm like, we're going to win every game.
It's all going so well. I love this.
No, it's a thing. And it's, because we have, it's not even just with the Celtics, but with all of our teams, we're so used to winning. Right, like the Red Sox had 4 World Series in like a short span of time. The Patriots with 6 Super Bowls. The Bruins in 2011 and the Celtics in 2008. Like we're just so used to winning in Boston and having our teams, even if we're not winning, almost always being in contention.
Sure.
Right. So it's like, and then when stuff, forgive me for saying this, but last season, Game 7 against the Heat, when Tatum twisted his ankle. It's like we see stuff like that all the time, and it's just like heartbreaking.
But the thing about that was like, I just remember that just the series so well, vividly, because somehow we all thought we were going to do that.
Yeah.
We all thought that was going to happen for the first time ever. We all really believed it. We were like, no, this is the game. Game 7 right now. It's happening. Like,
well, after the D. White putback, it's like we're the team of destiny.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly that.
I mean, as a Vikings fan, because I'm still a Minnesota Vikings fan. Remember the Minneapolis Miracle, Case Keenum, Stephon Diggs? At that point, we're like, oh my God, this is on lock. Like we're the team of destiny. God is smiling on the Minnesota Vikings. What happened next week? We go to Philly and get spanked. I think it was 49-7 in the NFC Championship. So it doesn't always work like that. That maybe the sports gods aren't always watching. So maybe the Celtics will win it this year.
Yeah, no, I hope so. I'm praying for it, but I will not put anything out into the universe until I see what unfolds.
Yeah.
But I did want to go back to when you guys were talking about like those legendary call moments or anything like that. So actually, out of everything you've done, you've come up with some awesome nicknames, and I know we talked about it, how you have a few methods of how you come up with them. You got Fadeaway J for JB and JT. You got the Exterminator for Tillman. There's so many nicknames you have for Peyton Pritchard that I started to lose track. What would you say is your favorite one that you've come up with?
Ooh.
Man, that's a good question. Oh God, there's so many. Now I'm like looking, I'm thinking about the entire roster and thinking about all the nicknames. I actually think, and this is again going way back, but to me, Preseason P is one of my favorites because first of all, it like I just feel like it plays on, if you're a real NBA sicko, like if you really follow this stuff, I think you understand why that's funny, right?
Yeah.
Because playoff P has been a punchline for like 5 years now. And flipping that to the preseason after he was going nuts in all the preseason games, and he's got all these nicknames. You basically put any word in front of the letter P and it can be a nickname, Peyton Pritchard. And that's been another like mini running joke throughout the season is, Crypto P and Pacific P and Cowboy P. I called him Fadeaway P at one point because he hit a fadeaway. Like, and then people will start tweeting at me. The Pacific P was actually from someone on Twitter. Some guy, like it's some burner account, but it was a great call. So we had to work it in. I think preseason P might be my favorite.
Comes off the screen, left alone. Why not? Are you sure you want to leave Peyton Pritchard all alone?
That's what do you call him?
Preseason P,
Yeah,
maybe?
exactly. They don't know. They didn't see your call.
Back to
That's hilarious.
I was happy with the Pritching hour. Those two really stand out, I think, because it feels like the first time where people were like giving me a stamp. Like that was a good call. Nice job.
Pritchard way downtown. Sticks it. Welcome back to the Pritching hour.
And that was cool. And I've actually thanked Peyton Pritchard personally for going off in the preseason because it gave us a chance to use those lines and people seem to approve of those. But the ones that people send in as suggestions that ultimately get approved by the players themselves are pretty neat. Like we've talked about Sam Hauser, but house money, house party, house trap, howitzer, all that stuff. I actually remember vividly the moment where I was telling him, like, for the first half of the season, like, need a nickname for you, man. Haven't come up with the right one yet. And then it clicked, like, let's just call him the howitzer because it kind of sounds like his name. And, he fires from long range. It's just perfect. And he's got a quick trigger. And I told him before a game, I'm like, dude, I got it. Howitzer. He's like, that's pretty good. And then he ran back to the locker room. And, like, so when the guys actually approve of the name, that's pretty sweet. Haven't had a moment yet where someone says, like, hey, you got to stop using that. In fact, Jaylen Brown, I have a nickname for him that I haven't even used yet, but that he seems to get a real kick out of. So when Jaylen Brown has another poster dunk, you might hear one that Jaylen Brown has signed off on himself.
Me on pins and needles waiting.
Yeah.
Do it, JB. Do it.
Spoil it. So,
No,
you
can't.
want to wait.
Gotta wait.
You're stronger than I.
But speaking of JB, I'm wearing Juice hoodie
Love
right
it.
now.
Love it. I have a Juice shirt back here.
I wanted to pay a little bit of tribute to your fadeaway, Jay, because when you first came up with that, I was like, that's so clever. And Jaylen Brown had been, or not even had been, he still is insanely good at hitting those turnaround fadeaway jumpers. And so I wanted to commemorate that a little bit with the hoodie today.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I actually think the Celtics at Celtics on Twitter, they used that first. And I'm like, that's really good. I'm going to try to work that into a broadcast. And then that sort of became a storyline too, is, I think Tatum was the first fadeaway Jay. Mm-hmm. And then we start to look at the numbers, and JB is actually like 55% on fadeaways.
Yep.
And one of my favorite Twitter accounts, NBA University, actually tweeted that out. Mm-hmm. And that night, JB hit a fadeaway. So I referenced it. And it's another one of those things where it's like, this is such a cool and beautiful platform we have, calling NBA games, where you say something, people are going to hear it and they're going to talk about it. And it's really,
and remember it.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so I feel like it gives us an opportunity to like show love to meet people who help enhance the experience as an NBA fan. And that account was one of them.
It breaks the fourth wall in some respect.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to, especially being someone that I similar to people that don't live in the area and can't go to games, but I can't personally afford to go to Celtics games a lot. So I watch the Celtics in my living room alone. And there is something about that, the feeling of unity in that makes you feel like you're still there, even if you can't be there, which is something that's super new, I think. I mean, not to be like, oh, and social media did that, but it kind of did. And the inclusion of it makes it so much more fun as a person just sitting in your living room to be involved directly. And yeah, that's great. I think that's really cool. I don't think I'd ever thought about it from the angle that you must go. And I was telling my mom this, but it didn't even occur to me that, of course, you would have to approve it. Of course, you would have to talk to the guy you're talking about. But to me, just being a person that watches the game, it didn't even occur to me that you would have to go and double check and whatever. But yeah, that's awesome. That's a really interesting perspective.
That puts a smile on my face what you just said about watching the game and feeling like you're part of it. That's the idea.
It's the best thing for me. It's like it's so easy to feel involved. And because of that little tiny door opening, you know what I mean? You really don't even have to say much. It's just the concept that, oh, wow, okay, just that little entrance of community makes it feel like I'm sitting in the garden, which is incredible because I've only ever sat there one time.
So Mr. Carter or Coach Carter or all the nicknames that I could think of for you, this is something I like to ask everybody, before we wrap up, is something you could tell all of the listeners or anybody tuning in for the first time who might not know you, or even if they do know you and they've been following our show or they've been following your career, what is just one thing you want to tell everybody? Can be advice, can be a story, can be anything.
All right. I'll do one serious thing and then one other thing that Scala said that I thought was funny. The serious thing is seriously, guys, you're way too nice. And I really appreciate all the kind stuff you said. And that goes for everyone on Celtics Twitter who has followed me and hits me up. The kind words, it's not lost on me because I said earlier, it really does matter to me what people think. And it's not necessarily because of how I want them to feel about me personally. It's about how I want them to feel when they're watching their favorite team. Thanks. But with that being said, it is, it's about the team. It's about the franchise. It's about the season and the journey we're on together. And I'm happy to be a vessel to share those stories and document it. But it's really about what's happening in front of us. The other thing with Scal is, so I mentioned that we like to give each other shit. He was telling me about someone, from the Celtics that he wanted me to meet. Let's say the guy's name is Mark. And Scal's like, yeah, just go do your corny shit. Hey, Mark, how's it going? Nice to meet you. And you'll be in. There you go. And so I guess, and I wrote that down. I have been taking notes on, fun moments and funny quotes and shit in case I ever want to write a book. And this will be chapter 1 is the first season. And the cover of that book will definitely be green.
Yes. Scal's quotes definitely are going to get their own section.
Yes. Yeah, that'll be a chapter.
No, that's great. And like I said before, your rapport with Scal has been just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really great.
It's been, I don't know how to describe it. Like I said, I called you guys almost like brothers before. But I feel like that's just not enough. All of Celtics and community, in my opinion, feels like a family. And sure. Ryan and I have talked about it in depth. It's how we've developed our platform. It's meant the world to us, the support that Celtics Nation and the Celtics community has showed us. So just hearing that, you have that same level of relationship with a guy like Scal, who's an icon in this community, is just, it's very heartwarming, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. Scal describes it as he feels like my uncle and I'm the nephew. Let's say he has an older brother, maybe 10 years older.
Yep.
And he has a kid. So the nephew is actually almost as close to the uncle in age. That's how he describes it, even though he's much older than I am.
Just so you know, he's a lot older.
Now that he just had a birthday, way older. He's got to stretch before the games. We're not even moving during the broadcast. I laughed so
hard. when I was like, yeah, that's about right. That makes sense. Very tall guy.
Yes.
Well, Drew, I do want to say thank you so much for joining. So why don't you plug yourself? I mean, obviously you're pretty easy to find because of how big you've gotten, but
He's
just
a
plug
really
yourself for everybody
micro
listening.
celebrity, so make sure you spell his out right. I don't know if they're going to find him, Jerry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is pretty tough to find. I made my Twitter handle in middle school, and Droodle is Drew DLE and then 25. So just a little backstory there. Droodle is the nickname my sister Samantha gave me when I was a kid. Droodle.
Shout out Samantha.
Yep, shout out Samantha. And then 25 it's always been one of my favorite numbers. My mom's favorite number is 5, and 25 is 5 times 5, and it looks cool because the numbers are kind of mirrored. I loved Reggie Bush when I was a kid, so just kind of made sense. But you can thank the women in my family for my Twitter handle, Droodle25. So
it's Women's Month. Let's just say
Yes.
that. Yeah, look at that. Women's plug.
Well, Drew, thank you again so much for joining Dunks and Donuts. And everybody for listening. We got some other great content coming out in the following weeks, so stay tuned for those announcements. And thanks for listening.
Thanks. Yay.